Our reading today focuses on the end of Joseph's story. With it, all the tension is released and problems solved. There is a reconciliation and a happy ending. Our reading comes from Genesis chapter 45, beginning at verse 1. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all those who stood by him, and he cried out, "Send everyone away from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it, and the household of Pharaoh heard it. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?" But his brother could not answer him, so dismayed were they by his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "Come closer to me." And they came closer, and he said, "I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. And do not be distressed or angry with yourselves, because you sold me there, for God sent me before you to preserve life. For the famine has been in this land these 2 years, and there are 5 more years in which there will be neither ploughing nor harvest. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant on earth, and to keep alive for you many survivors. So it was not you who sent me there, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord over this house, and a ruler over all the land of Egypt. Hurry and go to my father, and say to him, 'Thus says your son Joseph, God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me, do not delay. You shall settle in the land of Goshen, and you shall be near me, you and your children and your children's children, as well as your flocks, your herds, and all that you have. I will provide for you here, since there are 5 more years of famine to come, so that you and your household and all that you have will not come to poverty. And now your eyes and the eyes of my brother Benjamin see it is my own mouth that speaks to you. You must tell my father how greatly I am honoured in Egypt, and all that you have seen. Hurry and bring my father down here." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, while Benjamin wept upon his neck. And he kissed all his brothers and wept upon them. And after that his brothers talked with him. A happy ending. Although we do hear more of Joseph, it is very much in the context of tying up loose ends. His main narrative is over, and what a tale it has been. Joseph was his father Jacob's favourite son. Because of this, he was somewhat arrogant with his brothers. They disliked him and decided to do away with him. So they took him out into the wilderness with this in mind. But Judah, one of the 10 brothers, spotted a camel train and persuaded the others not to kill Joseph, but to sell him to the traders. Then they dipped his clothes in animal blood and returned to their father with the story that Joseph had been killed with wild animals. Joseph, meanwhile, had been taken to Egypt and sold as a slave to Potiphar, the captain of the Pharaoh's guard. He grew into a talented and handsome young man, trusted by Potiphar to oversee all his estates. But he caught the eye of Potiphar's wife, who, when he had rejected her advances, falsely accused him of rape. He was thrown into prison, where he remained for over 2 years. Whilst there, he interpreted the dreams of his fellow prisoners, one of whom was Pharaoh's cupbearer, who was released soon afterwards. 2 years later, Pharaoh, troubled by 2 dreams he had had, that no one could tell him what they meant. Belatedly, the cupbearer remembered Joseph and told the Pharaoh of him. Joseph was brought to the prison and taken before Pharaoh to interpret the dreams, where he predicted 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh was so impressed, he took Joseph into his service, where he rose to be the lord of the land of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh himself in importance. When the famine struck, Jacob heard that there was corn in Egypt and sent his sons to buy some to prevent the family from starving. The rest, as they say, is history. It is interesting that in his reconciliation with his brothers, Nowhere is there one word of reproach about the way they treated him. They have plotted against his life and sold him into slavery, but nowhere does he castigate them. Rather, he tells them not to feel guilty, because all this was preordained by God. It was all part of God's plan to save Jacob's family from famine and starvation. So, I suspect while most of us in Joseph's place would have found some satisfaction in the situation his brothers found themselves in, for him there is only forgiveness and the joy of being reconciled with them after many years. Furthermore, Jacob and his family are to migrate to Egypt to share in Joseph's good fortune. Famine is something we are all too aware of in today's world. Climate change, along with other factors such as deforestation and overcultivation, have led to large areas of the world suffering from drought or floods, unable to support the people who live there. Politicians seem unable to take the long-term view, putting short-term popularity ahead of long-term sustainability. As a result, thousands of people suffered the effect from too much or not enough rain. We will all be familiar with the pictures of starving children on the television, many of whom will not live to see their 5th birthday. Yet, there is actually enough food in the world to feed everyone. It's just that most of it is in the wrong place. I can well remember the grain and butter mountains and wine lakes of the 1980s caused by overproduction in Europe. But the response from Brussels was to take land out of production rather than risk bringing the market price down by selling it cheaply to the Third World. Fields around here that once swayed with golden corn in August and where sheep and cattle grazed now cater for caravan parks and quad trekking tracks as farmers are encouraged to diversify. God's bounty has produced enough for all. Unfortunately, we haven't yet learned to share, not even within our own society. And then there is a spiritual famine that many of us experience from time to time. There are times when we all struggle with our faith. There are times when, seeing or hearing of some disaster, we ask, where's God in all this? How could he allow it to happen? And then there are times in our own lives when circumstances are such we wonder if God is there at all. Sadly, the times we need God most are the times we doubt him most. But even in the darkest night has a dawn, and so it is for us. And when we look back on our times of doubt or pain, we can see that God was with us after all, walking beside us every step, and holding us when we feared to fall. God has a plan for each and every one of us. Joseph saw God's hand in all his trials and tribulations, and understood that the reconciliation with his brothers was part of that plan. He put his trust in God, and God didn't fail him, just as he will never fail us if we put our faith in him. Amen.